Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome all of you. We are continuing with chapter number 15 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, text number 7. Mamaivamsha jivaloke jiva bhutah sanatanaha manah shastrani indrayani prakriti sthani karshati. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. This is a very important verse. It explains to us how to realize and also to understand what is our real identity. Most people actually don't know who they really are. All they know is identification with the body. And we are not this body. That's what we learned in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. So here we see, first of all, Krishna says, Mamai Amsha. Amsha means part. And Mamai means mine. So Krishna is trying to say that all living entities, they are my eternal parts. Mamai Amsha Jiva Loke, these are living entities. Mamai Amsha Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal. So basically, Krishna is telling Arjuna for us that all living entities, they are eternal, which means there is no birth nor death for the living entity. It's just a change of body. So that is what we need to understand, that our true identity is that we are eternal parts of Krishna, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is our real identity, not the legal name that we have, which is for the body. Then he says, Manaha Shastrani Indriyani. Indriya means senses. Prakriti Sthani Karshati. So Krishna says, yes, living entities are my, eternal fragmental parts, but due to conditioned life. So what is the conditioning? Conditioning is, depending on our modes of material nature. What are we operating on? Are we operating in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance? Based on that, we get conditioned. Based on our association, whom we associate with, we get conditioned. Based on the food that we eat, we get conditioned. So Krishna says, due to this conditioning, the living entities are struggling very hard. And we can see that in this material world, we have to struggle hard to, make ends meet, to maintain the body and soul together. There are some lucky people who don't have to really work hard, and, they have a lot of money, so they don't have to struggle hard. But struggle is there, because Krishna explains there are 7 kinds of miseries, and that these 7 miseries are there for everybody. It's not that if, one has a lot of money, they will not struggle. Struggle is there. What are those 7 miseries? Birth, disease, old age, death. These are the 4 miseries for all living entities. Then there are 3 more miseries that are caused by mind and body. Miseries caused by other living entities, and miseries caused by the material nature. So struggle is there. Now let's say even a child when the child is born, the child comes out crying. It's a struggle for the child to come out. And not only that, it's a struggle for the child to even grow. You know, when the child is hungry, the mother thinks, oh, maybe the diaper needs to be changed. When the diaper needs to be changed, child is crying, mother thinks maybe the child is hungry. Child is not able to speak when it's a baby. So that is a struggle for the child. There's a struggle even for young people. There's struggle for old people, because there's so many medical issues with the body. You see, so struggle is there. I have never come across anyone who, says, I am very happy with my job. Of course, that person, if that person is a CEO or the owner of the company. But otherwise, I don't see, when I was working in corporate world, my colleagues never, were excited or enthusiastic that I'm so happy I'm working here, etc. No, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to compete with colleagues. It's a struggle to get a promotion, etc., etc. So Krishna says that due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with 6 senses. Now we know we have 5 senses, but the 6th sense that Krishna includes is mind. You see, mind gives more trouble than the body, because the mind is jumping like a monkey from one branch to another. If the mind is not under control, then the person really is confused, is bewildered. Very, very difficult to control the mind. I was listening to one story that there was this gentleman. He was able to get hold of a magic lamp. You've heard of Aladdin and the magic lamp. So he got hold of that magic lamp, and when he rubbed, a genie came out. So the genie said, well, if you really want to benefit from me, you have to keep giving me instructions. If you stop giving me instructions, then I will disappear. Now, this gentleman was very, what would you say, was very eager to become very rich, very famous, popular. So he started thinking, yes, he said, okay, I want you to build this factory. I want you to do this and that. And he noticed that the genie was finishing the work in split second. So now he got really afraid that I am running out of ideas. And if I don't engage the genie is going to disappear. Then what will happen to all my desires? So he approached a saintly person and he said, what should I do? Can you please guide me? The saintly person said, it's very simple. You take a bamboo stick, you stick it in the ground, and then you ask genie to go up and down till the next instruction. That way, the genie will be engaged. And in the meantime, you can think, what do you want genie to do for you, right? So what do we learn from this? The mind is like the genie, wants us to, give something to do. The mind is very active, cannot sit still. So how do we control the mind? Control it like the genie. Doesn't mean that, we put a bamboo stick and then ask the mind to go up, down. No, that means we do mantra meditation. We keep chanting. That is, go up, finish one round, come down, finish another round, and go up, finish another round. If we keep chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the mind will be engaged. Then the mind is not going to go here, there, or everywhere. So now here Krishna used an important word which is called conditioned life. What is this conditioned life? Conditioned life means that the person thinks, I am this body. It's the bodily concept of life. That is what causes entanglement in this material world. But here in this verse, Krishna is explaining our true identity, which is that we are spirit souls. He explains in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita that Dehi no asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara prapte dhiras tatrana muyati. That as the embodied soul, that means the soul is kind of caged inside the body. So as the embodied soul continuously passes from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly at the time of death, the soul leaves and goes into another body. And Krishna says a sober person is not bewildered. So if a person is not conditioned, is not only thinking about the body, is not just feeding the body, but is feeding the spirit soul also, then that person is considered to be unconditioned, no conditioning at all. That person is actually on the liberated platform, you see. So our real identity is that we are spirit soul, and Krishna says Sanatana means we are eternal. If we understand that we are eternal and we are not going to die, we are going to change bodies, then we operate on a different level of consciousness, you see. The individuality of us, each and every living entity, always stays. It's not that after death, then we merge into the Lord or we disappear. No, it is Sanatana, eternal. We only change bodies. We just move from one body to another. Now, how does that happen? We learned that in chapter 3 and 5 of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, we change bodies based on our karma, our activities. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So based on our activities, it is decided in which body are we going to enter. This is called karma, and this is also called transmigration. So those who are self-realized people, those who have spiritual knowledge, they understand this transmigration and they know how to break this cycle of birth and death again and again. Now, in the purport of this verse that we recited, Srila Prabhupada, in his purport, he gives explanation of Krishna's expansions. We can learn more about that in Srimad Bhagavatam. You see the books at the back. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we can get more knowledge about Krishna's pastimes, his expansions, his incarnations. So the primary expansions of Krishna are called Vishnu Tattvas. They are personal expansions like Lord Ramachandra, Lord Nrsimhadev, and the secondary ones are we living entities, which are separated expansions of the Lord. And what is our position? Our position is Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nitya Das. That means Jivera means we living entities, Swarup, our constitutional position, Krishnera, Krishna's Nitya Das. Nitya means eternal, Das means servant. So our true identity is, or our constitutional position is, to be eternal servants of Krishna. So being his parts, like today's verse says, Mamai Amsha. Amsha means part. We are eternal parts of Krishna. So because we are his eternal parts, qualitatively, we are same. But quantitatively, we are not. How do we understand that? Let's say we take a drop of water from the ocean. Qualitatively, the drop in my hand and the ocean qualitatively is the same, but quantity, no. I just have a drop in my hand, but the ocean is so vast. So the drop has come from the ocean. Qualitatively, it's the same, but quantity-wise, it is not. Similarly, we are eternal parts of Krishna, so qualitatively same, but not quantity-wise. He is the complete whole, and we are just fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord. You see, just like I gave the example of the ocean and the drop of water from the ocean, the chemical composition is the same, right? But ocean is very vast. That is the difference. So Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport of this verse that our position, as we know, we are Krishna's parts and we belong to the spiritual world, but because we had the desire to lord it over, to be the controllers, to be the controller, to be the enjoyer, to be, the boss, in other words, to be God. And so we had to leave the spiritual world and come down to this material world to enjoy. Now, my question is, are we enjoying? Yes. Is that enjoyment permanent? Probably not, because the happiness and enjoyment in this material world has a beginning and it has an end. Next question is, are we satisfied? If we were satisfied, then we would not be looking for satisfaction elsewhere. Are we peaceful? If yes, very good. That means we are self-realized and we are liberated. If we are not, how do we become peaceful? Because if we are not peaceful, we cannot be happy. So the question is, where is the problem? The problem is, Srila Prabhupada explains, that we are misusing our minute independence given to us by the Lord. What is that? That the Lord has given us this human form of life, which also comes along with philosophical intelligence, which means we can try to understand, who am I? Where have I come from? Why am I suffering in this material world? And how to end this suffering permanently? And not only that, where do I go from here? What is my ultimate goal in life? You see, these are the questions that come in the mind of intelligent people. So if we are not, taking instructions from the Lord, if you're not trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita, if you're not trying to do mantra meditation, then we will keep going on in the cycle of birth and death. In other words, we will be misusing our minute independence that is being given to us. The only way to come out of this cycle is to perform devotional service to Krishna. And devotional service starts with mantra meditation. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That is the Maha Mantra given to us by the Lord for this age, which is Kali Yuga. So what has happened, like we learned in chapter 14, the previous chapter, which is modes of material nature, that we living entities, we get entangled in these different modes. Sometimes we operate in the mode of ignorance, sometimes passion, and sometimes goodness. So in that process, these modes are also trying to dominate. And then in that process, we forget to perform loving devotional service to Krishna. And that is why Krishna says, we are struggling hard. Karshati, we are struggling really hard for existence in the material world. So Krishna says Karshati, very, very strong word. He doesn't say struggling. He says struggling very hard. In other words, it's like, imagine if we are shackled by iron chains. There are chains which are made of iron, and they are shackling our say feet. We are bound up, so we can't really move. We don't have freedom. There's nothing much we can do, plus it's painful. So this is what the modes of material nature do. They somehow or the other, they bind us. So and all this starts in the mind, like we were talking about the mind, it's very difficult to control the mind. But those who are determined to control the mind, then it becomes easy. You see, for everything, there is a process. Say, I want to learn music, I have to learn the basics. If I want to learn a musical instrument, I have to follow the instructions of the teacher. There is a process. So similarly, to control the mind also, there is a process. So to do that, first we need to understand, what does the mind do? You see, the activities of the mind is the thoughts, thinking, feeling, willing. So all this happens in the mind. And then from there, the thoughts turn into words, and the words turn into action. So this is how the cycle is there. So if a person depends on the different modes of material nature, then it becomes very, very difficult. So if I am in the mode of ignorance, then my mind is going to act accordingly. If I'm operating in the mode of goodness, then automatically the mind is going to behave in such a way, then that's going to lead unto words which are going to be pleasant, and that will lead on to activities which are going to be good activities. So you see, Krishna, in fact, Srila Prabhupada in this purport also explains that if we are operating in the mode of goodness, the actions obviously are going to be good. But in passion, if we do activities in the mode of passion, then those activities become troublesome. And of course, he mentions, according to the scriptures, that if we operate in the mode of ignorance, then we start degrading, and then the next birth is in the lower species of life. So as I explained, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So based on our activities, we decide, which birth we are going to take in next life. Let me give an example. Say, for instance, I sow the seeds of lemon, lemon seeds are sown. And I'm expecting the mangoes to grow. Is that possible? No. I'm the one who sowed the seeds of lemon. So obviously I'm going to get lemons. So if I want to have the mango fruit, then I need to sow the mango seeds. So the sowing of the seeds is the karma, our activities that we are performing. So Bhagavad Gita helps us to somehow or the other understand, how the mind works, how the senses work, how to control them, what is the process to attain peace. Like in chapter 5, we got the peace formula from Krishna. So when we take on this knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita step by step in a very systematic way, then we are able to operate our lives in such a way that we can break the cycle of birth and death. So now from this verse, we have already understood today's verse that our soul is covered by the body, which includes the mind and the senses, right? Manashashtrani indriyani, Krishna says. So that we are, it's covered, the soul is covered, including the mind and senses. But once one gets liberated, then this material covering will perish. Then one gets a spiritual body. In other words, while being in this body, we can spiritualize this material body, make it from material to spiritual. It's very simple. It's called getting Krishnized, that spiritual body. How? Let me give you an example. Let's take an iron rod. And we take that iron rod and we put it in fire, real hot, huge fire. After some time, we will see that iron rod will turn red hot. And if we touch that iron rod, we will definitely burn our finger. So what has happened is just an iron rod, but when it comes in contact with the fire, it gets the qualities of the fire. That means it is hot, It's burning, and it can burn our skin, you see. So even though this body is material, but if we start operating in Krishna consciousness, which means we are conscious of Krishna all the time, whenever activities we are performing, then we start spiritualizing our body. A very good example is eating sanctified food. The food that we prepare, the vegetarian food that we prepare, if we offer it to Krishna with love and devotion, then that food becomes sanctified. It becomes spiritual food, which is called prasadam. And Prabhupada explains that when we eat that spiritual food, it purifies the mind, the senses, the body, even the finer brain tissues, so that we can understand the spiritual knowledge, you see. So that is called the stage of liberation, where we are trying to liberate ourselves, where the material covering will start vanishing or perishing, and then we can get a spiritual body, because without the spiritual body, we cannot qualify ourselves to go back to the spiritual world. The entrance to the spiritual world is possible only with the spiritual body, and then we can come face to face with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here we can see that Krishna is explaining our true identity, that we are Mamai Amsha Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that we are eternal fragmental parts of Krishna. And Krishna says we are struggling hard in this material world with our senses and the mind, you see. So if we somehow or the other meditate on this instruction of Krishna, then we will see that we will start understanding, or not just understanding, but changing our consciousness, changing the way we think, changing, our interaction with the others. Say, for instance, especially in India, we have a custom when we meet, a friend or relative and all, we fold our hands and we say namaste. What does that mean? That is offering respect to the Lord who is in the heart of the other person. We've heard from the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is situated in everyone's heart as the Paramatma, as a super soul. So we are offering respect to that Lord in the heart of the other person. So when we start operating on that level, then we will see that gradually it's bringing peace and happiness to us. So we are fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord, and this fragmental part is not material, it is spiritual. That is why the soul is called spirit soul. It is spiritual. And the body, of course, is material, but the soul is spiritual. So that is the difference. And we learned in chapter 2 where Krishna says the soul cannot be cut into pieces, right? It cannot be destroyed. The soul is eternal. So soul is just passing from one body to another. It is just, it's a journey. But we understand that where there is birth, there's surely going to be death. And in between birth and death, there is disease and old age. So here is the cycle that, see, when we go to a fair, we see the Ferris wheel, which keeps going up and down, up and down. It just keeps going round and round. How many times can we go on that ride? There will be a time when we will be really tired or dizzy, and it'll be like, oh, I am done with this Ferris wheel. But we have been doing this life after life, transmigrating from one body to another. It's high time. We are very fortunate that we have access to this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, where we can understand, who we are and how to break the cycle of birth and death. So if, if we understand this part, and if we really want to stop struggling, like today's verse talks about struggling very hard, if he wants to stop struggling, then we have to take some action. And what is that action? That action is, first of all, to understand our real identity, which is the eternal heart of the Supreme Lord. That is it. So, and from this, we also learn from this verse that the mind is the culprit, right? It's a mind where everything starts. You see, in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, when the senses come in contact with sense objects, you see, it starts with the senses, and mind is also part. So when the senses come in contact with sense objects, there is attachment, a desire develops. Oh, I want that. I like this. I saw this. I love it and I want it. And when that desire is not fulfilled, then there is anger. There is a bewilderment. There is, bewilderment of memory. Intelligence is lost and a person falls down. So it all starts in the mind. It all starts with the senses. So here, it is important to understand that we need to control the mind and the senses. And just like in any activity that we want to learn, regulation is very important, right? I always give this example that if I want to start a business, my son puts in a lot of investment, everything I start, but then I lose interest. I don't have the determination, neither the enthusiasm. So what is going to happen? I'm going to lose all that money, all that investment, you see? So I have to be regularly working on that business, regularly trying to improve myself, regularly taking on more knowledge to understand how to expand my business, etc. The same applies in spirituality also. If we want to control our mind and senses, regulation is very, very important. Now, question is, how do we regulate our senses? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes it very clear that a person who does not eat too much nor eat too little, someone who does not sleep too much or sleep too little, in other words, balancing, in other words, controlling, right? So when we start hearing the Bhagavad Gita, getting on this knowledge, simultaneously, side by side, we should try to do the mantra meditation also, like chanting the Maha Mantra, associating like we associate on Wednesdays, right? We come together and we hear the Bhagavad Gita, we attend these classes and we learn, and then we need to put it into practice. Like we always, after the class, we chant for about 10 times the Maha Mantra, which is, if you like, you can chant with me also. You will just chant for a few minutes just to get an idea. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So you see, it's very, very simple. It's not difficult at all. And it would be nice if you all can make it a habit to chant this Maha Mantra on a daily basis. So today's verse, we understood our real identity, and we understood how we can control our mind and senses. So I'm going to end now, and I don't know if all of you know the Maha Mantra. So here it is. And if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask. Thank you so much for joining.